Hey guys, today we're going to take a look at this 100 amp hour 12.8 volt lithium iron phosphate battery from SOK Battery. I'm not overly familiar with this particular company, however each time I put out a video reviewing one battery or another, my viewers seem to suggest looking at SOK. So I went ahead and purchased one. This battery was $570, that included free shipping and was the cost delivered to my door. You can connect up to 4 of these in series for a 48 volt system. It's rated for a maximum discharge of 100 amps and a maximum charge of 50 amps. It's rated for 4,000 to 8,000 cycles and comes with a 7-year warranty. So this battery features a very nice metal enclosure. It's not cheap plastic like some of the others I've tested and seen on the market. Looking at the terminals, each terminal comes with a protective rubber cover. And the battery posts are either a Phillips screw or a hex bolt. There is a split lock washer, a flat washer, and this is a very thick bolt. I'm not sure offhand what the size is, but it's definitely a bit more beefier than some of the other batteries I've used. So like usual, we're going to open this up and see how it's built inside, but before we do that, I want to make sure to run a capacity test first in case I break anything while I'm disassembling it. Alright, so the battery has been charged up until high voltage disconnect of the BMS using my iCharger X6. So the nominal voltage of this battery is 12.8. It's a 100 amp hour battery. That gives us 1,280 watts. We want to put a 0.2 C rate since that's typically the standard discharge. And to do that, I'll just be using a series of incandescent light bulbs. Alright, so my typical test setup here, the battery comes out and goes into this Batrium shunt, then goes into this inverter. I have an HRC fuse back here for added safety. This shunt will be transmitting data through a Batrium Watchmon 5 to my little wireless display tablet here. And on this tablet we can see voltage, amperage, wattage, amp hours, and watt hours. It's currently 11:14 a.m. and I'll go ahead and turn on the load. Alright, so 460 watt light bulbs is giving me around 260 watts, which is near perfect. I was looking for 256. So I'll let this run down until we reach low voltage disconnect of the BMS in this battery, and we'll see what our measured capacity is. Alright, the discharge test concluded at 4:25 p.m. and we're at 102.6 amp hours. Alright, so to get started with opening this battery up, it looks like we just have a series of Phillips screws. There are 3 screws on each long side and 2 screws on each short side. And hopefully that's all we need to do to take the lid off and it's not like glued on or anything like that. No, that was easy. Okay, so that is a gigantic BMS. Look at the size of that. And that heatsink, 5.1 millimeter thick heatsink. That is huge. Alright, so looking down in here we can see the 4 cells. They are aluminum cased prismatic cells. Alright, so the main positive and negative, you can see there are 2 wires for each. These are silicone 200 degrees Celsius insulation rated wires. They are 7 AWG or 7 gauge wires. So we have the main positive goes to the main positive post. We have the main negative goes through the BMS into the B- terminal. And then at the top here, it exits the BMS through the P/C- terminals and goes through to the post. And these posts have some very thick mass to them. You can see there is a Phillips or hex bolt screw, a split lock washer, a flat washer, then both ring terminal lugs, and then we have the terminal post itself. And those terminal posts are 8 millimeters in thickness, so there is a lot of mass on those posts. We can see the balance leads come off. They go into a piece of plastic spiral wrap just for insulation. Then they go up to the BMS here on the right hand side. Additionally, we have a temperature sensor here. This temperature sensor is screwed down to the metal bracket that's holding the cells in place from the top. So I'm going to see if I can pull out some of these cells and see if there are any markings on them as to what they are. So I'm using an insulated ratchet even though this battery is fully discharged. And these are 10 millimeter. And they appear to be torqued down pretty well. So with the first bus bar removed, we can see the tops, the terminals of the individual cells. They are very shiny. They are aluminum terminals. They don't appear to be scratched up or anything, so I know these are new cells. They are not used. So the bus bars were held down with this bolt here, and like I said, this is a 10mm hex, and this is a serrated flange nut, which is good. Here is the bus bar I removed. It's a pretty nice bus bar. It feels like it's got some good mass to it. It's about 2mm in thickness. I'm not sure what metal this is, but I do not believe it to be copper. I did file down this corner of it to see if it was like plated copper or something like that, and it's still silver inside, so I don't know that it's aluminum. It doesn't feel light enough to be aluminum, but I don't believe it's copper either. Alright, so I got the screws removed from this retaining clamp here. Let's very carefully remove that and set it aside. Alright, so here's the cell itself. You can see a close-up look at the terminals there. Terminals all look good. They don't show signs of being used other than the single time it was assembled in this enclosure. QR code is intact. The QR code does spec out 100 amp hour, 320 watt if I'm reading that correctly. And it says GFB, so maybe GFB is the brand name. I'm not familiar with that particular brand name, but these are rated for 100 amp hours, which is pretty cool. Sometimes some of these manufacturers will stick in like 105 amp hour, and they'll derate it to 100 amp hour because the cell is either underperforming or just to make sure you're getting actual rated capacity. But in this case, these cells are rated for 100 amp hour, and they tested at 102 amp hour, so that is fantastic. Another fun thing to note is you see they have this rubber material separating the cells. I don't really know if this is neoprene. I believe it to be neoprene. I'm not certain. They have everywhere in here insulated with neoprene. Interestingly, except for where cell number 1 joined up against cell number 2, they did not have anything separating in there. So if I pull out cell number 1, so you can see how perfectly flat these cells fit together. They are not bloated, expanded, nothing. So you can see on the side here on the left, they have I'm going to call it neoprene. I'm not 100% sure if that's what it is. They have some in the back there. Anywhere the cell touches metal, they have that insulative material. The front, even down there at the bottom, they have some. So you can see cell number 3 here also has 2 strips of this material between where it joins to cell number 4. So let's just pull out cell number 3 here, and we'll put it up against cell number 1. Again, look how flat and perfect they fit together. There is no bulging whatsoever from these cells. They are perfect. But it's interesting to me to see how this is done for 2 reasons. Number 1, we can see the cells are held in place on all sides, but they are not compressed. It's like they are just prevented from expanding. And number 2, they are relying on the heat shrink in some locations to keep these cells separated. I know some of us with the EVE cells were concerned about a voltage potential on the casing, and what happens if this wrapping gets nicked or rubs through. Will you get some, short circuit current or a little bit of current or whatnot? But it doesn't appear to be the case with these cells at least. Alright, so there wasn't too much I can find online about this BMS. There are a couple of part numbers down in there, but it didn't yield any results when I was searching. I don't really want to take this apart though and risk damaging it, but from what I can see, it does appear to be very high quality build components. And I see there's actually another, what appears to be a temperature sensor inside there. And that's connecting right here under that glob that says W1. So I guess this does have thermal protection of the battery and thermal protection of the BMS, which is very cool. 2 separate sensors. It should be noted too that while I'm reassembling this, I noticed that there are 2 different size bolts. They actually used a bolt that was slightly longer on the 2 studs where these ring terminals connect. So we've got the small one at 16.3 millimeters and the large one at 18.54 millimeters. I find it very cool that they actually evaluated each of these connector thicknesses to make sure to use as many threads as possible on the posts of these batteries. Alright, so now we've got everything put back together here. I've got my iCharger X6 connected. We are charging at 2 amps currently. And the very last test I want to run on this battery is to make sure that the low temperature disconnect is working. Typically I would do that by sticking the entire battery in the freezer overnight. But I've seen some other YouTubers who are creatively using a glass of salt water that's below freezing to make this happen. So I'm going to give that method a try today. So we've got our glass of frozen salt water. It's approximately -4 degrees Celsius. Let's see what happens here. And there we go. It took exactly 11 seconds for this BMS to shut down. And we can see on the iCharger it says output connection broken. That's pretty cool. That was significantly easier than freezing this thing and waiting 24 hours. Alright guys, there you go. I definitely see now everybody was recommending I check out these SOK batteries. The build quality is fantastic. We have a nice metal enclosure. It's brand new cells. It's all properly padded, insulated, good bus bars, good thickness of wire. We have decent terminal blocks. The only thing I was unsure of was the material used in the bus bars. I'm pretty sure at this point that it was aluminum, but you know, there's nothing wrong with aluminum at all. It is a perfectly valid electrical conductor. It was reasonably sized in my opinion. It's on aluminum posts on the battery, so that's fine. One thing I really would have liked to know is how they torqued down those bolts into those posts, because they were in there pretty tight, and as you know, I'm working on assembling an EVE battery bank and I'm trying to figure out the proper torque specification for those bolts as well. So yeah, I have absolutely nothing bad to say. The price point is fantastic. This was $570, free shipping, out the door, that was it. I did go out and purchase this battery myself just for the purposes of this video. This was not sponsored or anything, so I will leave a link in the description below that is an affiliated link. Should you choose to purchase one and use that link, it will help support my channel and fund these types of projects. Otherwise, if you have any questions or comments, please leave them below. Hit that like button before you go, and thanks for watching.